Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Meet the Solutionaries. You have found us at greentv.com. We are so glad you have, because this is where we bring you the best experts and leaders and advocates and activists on all shades of green. And today, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Deborah McNamara. She is the co-executive director of a wonderful group called climatevoice that was founded by Bill Weil. And we're going to jump right in and find out about the beginning of climatevoice, what started that organization, what's behind it, and then tell you about this campaign that's critically important.
And our mission is to engage the private sector in advocating for stronger climate policy and action. What was found is that the chamber is almost always siding with the oil and gas industry. Like if you're a dues-paying member of the U.S. Chamber, then you are unfortunately complicit with this obstruction. So what we're asking companies to do is to leave the Chamber of Commerce and lead on climate policy. And we want them to be very vocal about this. We want to break free from these old systems and structures of status quo that are keeping us so chained to the fossil fuel industry.
Thanks for being with us, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me, and great to be here. So yes, so I work with climatevoice, which was founded in 2020 by Bill Weil, who was a former sustainability professional at both Google and Facebook. And while he was working for many years on the inside of the big tech industry, focused on climate solutions and sustainability action, one of the things that he noted was that the private sector is working really hard to reduce emissions and address supply chain issues and have sustainability plans and goals, which is all fantastic. However, when it came to advocating for strong climate policy, there was a gap there. So Bill left Facebook a couple of years ago and went on to found climatevoice, which is now 3.5 years old and going strong. And our mission is to engage the private sector in advocating for stronger climate policy and action. So that's what we're focused on. We're asking companies and their employees to do more to accelerate the policy action that we know we need in terms of meeting all of our climate goals. And climatevoice is there working with not only the employees, but also executives, both on the inside of companies, as well as working with the media and other entities on the outside, keeping the pressure on companies to just do the most possible in terms of taking strong climate action and being true leaders in this space.
From what I'm learning, the Chamber of Commerce is really the chamber of cognitive dissonance in a climate sense. Tell us what we might not know and why it's a bit duplicitous in terms of what the chamber puts forward in its interface with the public, and what's really going on behind the scenes and what really has to stop.
Yeah. So I'll tell you all about our Escape the Chamber campaign, which actually just launched in August of this year. So it's brand new. So you who are tuning in are going to be of the first to hear about this. But the background is that trade associations are often the entities that are lobbying for businesses. And so I'm sure most of you have heard of the Chamber of Commerce, but the Chamber of Commerce is a trade association and one of the largest in the country. And the problem that we have found is that a lot of times companies who identify as being pro-climate or climate leaders are letting their trade associations do the lobbying for them when it comes to climate policy issues. And unfortunately, the Chamber of Commerce has a very long track record of opposing climate policy solutions. So at least 20 years deep. And Brown University did a study in 2021 that spotlighted that, just looking at this long history of not just opposition, but obstructionism, like very blatant obstructionism. And then again in 2023, a group called Influence Map did another study looking at the Chamber of Commerce and their lobbying record. And unfortunately, what was found is that the chamber is almost always siding with the oil and gas industry. So for example, in 2022, the chamber's decisions that had to do with climate policy issues lined up with the American Petroleum Institute and the American Gas Association on at least 6 occasions. And that was almost all of them that had to do with climate policy last year. So this is an issue that is not new. It's been going on for a very long time, but I think it's coming to the fore more because, obviously we have the IPCC telling us we need to do more. We have lots of groups doing more in terms of calling for stronger advocacy and policy advocacy. And the private sector, I think within the private sector, I think there's an awareness that more action is needed, even to meet, each business's own sustainability and emissions reduction goals. We need that policy lever. But what has been a gap in understanding is that all the while, these trade associations who are representing a huge swath of American businesses are opposing climate policy progress. So we have been
the IRA, the climate bill, right? That's shocking.
Yes, yeah. So, and I'll give a couple of really tangible examples of how this obstructionism has been playing out just in the last year and a half or so. So the chamber did oppose the Inflation Reduction Act, and so that to me, that's one of the most egregious examples. This is the best shot we've got at meeting. Yeah, exactly. And meeting these targets that we know we need to meet and what scientists are telling us we need to meet. They also opposed methane standards. And for those who aren't clued into methane standards, this is really important because methane is, of course, a greenhouse gas, but it also traps heat at, I think it's like 80 times more potently than other greenhouse gases. So it's a very dangerous greenhouse gas. And the chamber opposed those methane standards. And this was last year as well. They also opposed EPA power plant rules, which again, these rules were meant to strengthen emissions reduction goals, carbon reduction goals. They also supported the Willow project and again, those who might be just tuning in, the Willow project is a very controversial oil drilling project in Alaska that was heavily opposed by indigenous communities and the climate movement in general for many reasons, not only the environmental justice concerns, but also because of how many, the quantity of emissions that will be released because of this project. But these are just a short list of examples of recent chamber activities obstructing climate policy progress. And we wanted to launch the Escape the Chamber campaign, which I'll tell you more about, to address this issue and to help educate not only the American public about this gap, but employees and businesses, and just making sure that people know, like if you're a dues paying member of the US Chamber, then you are unfortunately complicit with this obstruction.
My first question is, does the chamber know that climatevoice knows and that you're getting word out? Are they embarrassed? Are they trying to hide it? Or do they somehow try to justify the duplicity and the dissonance?
Yeah, so we did have an article in the Washington Post that was published in August by the Washington Post Tech 202. So you could look that up to learn more too. But that reporter did reach out to the chamber for comment, and they did comment on our campaign. But unfortunately, what the chamber does and has been doing since at least 2017 is greenwash. And I'm sure that's something that you all have talked about here on Green TV. But the chamber has gotten very good since 2017 at making statements in support of climate action, which is what they continue to do. And they will even say, well, we have a climate action task force and we're looking at this. And they have been looking at this since 2017. But unfortunately,
are they seeing that we're not seeing?
Right. Yeah. So unfortunately, that despite those efforts, we are not seeing that the lip service that's paid to climate action and policy progress is translating to the lobbying decisions on the ground.
They're looking into it. I mean, that's like the worst thing you could say as the planet's on fire.
Yeah.
What is it that they're going to find? So they don't outright either accept that it's real or deny it. It's just sort of passing the buck, delay tactics. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I think the companies who formed this group back in 2017 truly do care about the issue. So I do want to say that, there are members of the US Chamber of Commerce who care and who have chosen this engagement strategy, trying to change, the chamber from within and, applying pressure through this new group since 2017. I think as we see with other efforts across the climate movement, this issue of engagement is unfortunately yielding very little. And I think that's the same with the chamber. So that's part of why we launched this campaign, is like, okay, we've tried this. All we're getting are statements. We're not getting the actual lobbying for climate policy progress. And so something else needs to happen. So what we're asking companies to do is to leave the Chamber of Commerce and lead on climate policy. And we want them to be very vocal about this. We want them to make public statements. We want them to urge others to join them. We want them to make sure that anytime the chamber is opposing a climate policy piece of legislation, that every company is speaking up in active opposition to this. And then we want to make sure that companies know that they need to be aligning their political contributions with climate leadership and action. And unfortunately, when you're a member, a dues paying member of the chamber, that is not happening. You're often spending, millions ultimately over a period of time supporting this entity, which is moving us in the wrong direction.
Would it be too strong to say escape the death chamber? Sorry,
no,
I was at a climate conference all day yesterday, and my inbox every day is just filled with such dire news that, and then the Republicans, they fancy themselves to be pro-life. I call them the pro-death party between COVID and guns and climate. So pardon my directness, but I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time in November, if all goes well, and there's no mincing words anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know you said escape the death chamber. For those who haven't yet seen our campaign website, I just want to point people to it. It's escapethechamber.org. So I highly urge you, please go there. But we're kind of going with this dungeon theme because really it's so in the past. We need to be breaking free from this dungeon is kind of how we want to break free from these old systems and structures of status quo that are keeping us so chained to the fossil fuel industry and that lobbying dominance that the fossil fuel industry unfortunately has represented, and really free ourselves, literally escape. Let's free ourselves. Let's work together to create the brighter future that we know is possible.
Escape the darkness. Well, we certainly do need to the status quo on so many levels, and I'm so glad you're doing this campaign. How are you getting word out, especially to the companies that are somehow members of the chamber, but perhaps somehow not aware of this, or making sure that they can't claim ignorance by the time you're finished with this campaign?
Yeah. So we work actively with employees at a number of companies who are members of the chamber. And actually, I wanted to make sure that our viewers know who some of these members are. Of course, on the oil and gas side, we have Exxon, Shell, ConocoPhillips, Chevron. Those are all chamber members. In the tech sector, we've got Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, Amazon. Let's see, and then I'll name a couple others just so folks can have a sense. But 3M, Cisco, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Meta, Nike, Pepsi, Pfizer, Qualcomm, the list goes on. But I just want folks to have a sense. Yeah, I want folks to have a sense of who we're talking about here. So we're doing an education campaign, first of all, just to answer your question, what are we doing? So we're reaching out to executives and sustainability professionals, certainly at these companies, and then also employees. And that's part of what makes Climate Voice's model of change a bit different, perhaps. We believe that when employees speak, companies will act. So if there's enough pressure from the inside, urging executives and leaders in the company to do something different, we believe that there's great potential there. So we are actively working with employees, urging employees to raise the issue with their supervisors and so on. So we have a whole escape plan. And again, if you're an employee watching this, you can go to escapethechamber.org and download our escape plan. And it gives detailed instructions, like here are the steps to go through, who to talk to, how to set up a meeting. We even have sample email language you can draw from, so you can forward the email. And then one of our easiest calls to action is to sign our petition. So we have a petition. that is focused on these members of the Chamber of Commerce that we'll be delivering as soon as we reach a threshold of signatures.
And I've seen Bill valiantly call out the companies he used to work for, Google, Facebook, whatever, on LinkedIn. Google will have some announcement about their climate initiatives. He'll say, then why are you in the Chamber of Commerce, which is blocking? And it's just so in real time. I just love his chutzpah.
Yes, definitely. Well, and I think that's part of what we need right now is just an elevating of the misalignment that's happening. And of course, it's not just here with this issue of membership with the Chamber of Commerce, but it's happening all across society. And for those who might not have seen it, there's a new organization called F- that has just published a report about lobbyists and how many of them are double dealing. So, lobbying for the fossil fuel industry at the same time as for, universities who are dealing with different climate impacts, or cities who are dealing with climate impacts. So there are issues of misalignment everywhere, and I think that that's the invitation for this phase where we're at in fighting this climate crisis that we're in, is to really be vigilant. Where is there misalignment? Where's the obstruction? Like, how can we make sure to be addressing that?
What do you? I know what you probably hope happens. What do you think will happen with this campaign? Because they can only get away with being duplicitous, for lack of a better term. I could come up with another term, for so long. Once the information is, they can't hide in the dark anymore in the dungeon.
Yeah. So what I'm hoping will happen, and what I think will happen, is that this will lead to continued pressure on the U.S. chamber, and they're already feeling it. They've been feeling it from the outside and from within. And this isn't the first campaign focused on the Chamber of Commerce. For at least the past decade, there have been different organizations calling this out and asking for stronger climate leadership. So I think this is a continuation of the pressure needed here and everywhere in society right now. And I think it's part of the raising of awareness and education about all the different systems at play that are factoring into where we're at right now in terms of why we're not making more progress. We are making some progress culturally, with the understanding that, yes, like, something needs to happen where, we have more people feeling the direct impacts and so on. I don't know that people understand all the systems at play. So I think this campaign is helping to do that. But I think employees are going to get angry. I've already seen that working with employees on the inside of some of these companies, like, just disbelief. I can't believe this. I thought our company stood for this. We got to do something. So I think there's the anger, the surprise, and then that spurs action, right, and advocacy. And so that is our goal here, and the hope that more and more people will be raising their voices and asking for change, and that the chamber will feel that pressure and ultimately be shamed into doing something differently going forward, because they will know that even more people are watching, and we will be there to call out the misalignment at every turn.
So is this campaign sort of in for the long term, as long as it takes, or is there an end goal that would show you that they're on their way, they're making progress, so we'll call it off? Are you really going for the whole Megillah?
No, we're in this for the long game. And I think, I've been working in the environmental and climate space for over 20 years. And one thing, if I've learned nothing, or if I've learned nothing else, it's that, all of these efforts need to be long game efforts. And I do trust that we're getting where we need to be. But yes, Climate Voice is in this for the long term. We will keep doing this until we see meaningful change. And the most meaningful change is that we want to see the chamber lobbying differently. We want to see the chamber, actively and forcefully lobbying for climate policy solutions. That's our, that's the ultimate goal here. In the short term, success looks like companies getting really loud, using their power, speaking up, leaving, asking for more leadership, getting others to join, just continuing to use their voices for positive change.
Climate voices. Do you know what the political what's the word? Participation in the chamber is like, is it mostly Republican because traditionally Republicans are the pro-business party?
You know, I don't. I actually don't.
Or the
Yeah.
political of it's Friday, the
Yeah.
Chamber
No.
of
No.
Commerce.
Yeah. I don't. So what I will say is that I think the chamber and even the local chambers too have a more conservative reputation. That I can say, with certainty. And I know I spoke with a colleague at the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce, which is trying, working to create an alternate option for people who want a lobbying entity that is focused on the green solutions. And they had done a study of local chambers and found that very few of them were doing taking on sustainability issues and even diversity, equity, inclusion issues and so on. So I think there's we're dealing with a reputation of conservatism, whether that's true or not in terms of how party affiliation.
There's a Green Chamber of Commerce. That's news to me.
Yeah. U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce. And then there's also the American Sustainable Business Network. So I just mentioned, some viewers might be thinking, oh, well, what else are we supposed to do here? There are other groups that are actively using their power to lobby for climate solutions. So mention those. And I also want to mention that because some businesses think, oh, we can't do this. Like we get to, there's too much benefit from being part of the chamber. But Apple did leave the chamber in 2009 over disagreements about climate stances. So it can be done. And Apple is still around and thriving.
And I'm talking to you on a laptop, MacBook Pro. Can't talk today. So very glad to hear that. So is it difficult to find out if your company is part of the Chamber of Commerce? You may have touched on that, but if someone isn't sure, can they go to their boss and ask, or is there a list online about member companies so you can just start there?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of that information is public. You can certainly start by asking your company. You can also go to the U.S. Chamber's website, and there's a list of board members that you can check out, so you can find out if your company serves on the board. What isn't always hard to find is, how much money a company is spending in dues. It varies. So there's some information that you would have to do more digging on, but most of it is public.
Okay, I'm so glad you're doing this. Anything you'd like to add that we haven't hit on?
Well, I think if you're watching this and you're wondering, okay, what am I supposed to do about this? Or the chamber feels like too wonky or too far removed from what you're doing, I would say it's not. Do go to escapethechamber.org and sign our petition at the very least. Super quick, easy, low-hanging fruit action that you can take. And then just share this info, especially with colleagues or peers that work at some of the companies that I've mentioned here. And there's more information on ways to take action on that website too. But I would say everyone can do something, and just keep talking about. Not only keep talking, we need the action, but make sure everybody knows about these systemic crux points like misalignments and like sticking points and obstruction, and that we're all working on addressing that. And it's everywhere we are, there's something to work on. So I would just urge everyone to start where you are, and thanks for whatever you're able to do.
Thank you. Well, we talk often about the fossil fuel companies, and Michael Mann just yesterday at a climate conference said what everyone who's interviewed says, we got to get off fossil fuels. Well, I say easier said than done. We're all using them. Many of us, fly and drive and all these things that we're just unfortunately kind of forced to do if we're going to be in our society. What's your view of that? I know it's kind of a big, maybe surprise question to end this interview on, but when I hear that, I want to know, how can we do this? Because regardless of the chamber's, actions, as long as the fossil fuel industry is talk about duplicitous, up ads about how we're all for the green future, but they're, completely not only getting subsidies that are huge, while renewable energy doesn't get anything like that, but they're also, continuing to drill, baby, drill as much as possible. And they're hoping, I guess, that they can squeeze every last drop out. And it seems like that'll happen about the time it's, I hate to say too late, but, you know, like it's already too late, right?
Yeah, I mean, this brings us back to where we started, which is just the importance of policy action in that policy space. So here's the thing, there's only so much that individuals can do. And, you know, individual actions do matter. I am not saying that. And in order to get to the speed and the scale required to solve this crisis, we absolutely need the policy levers. And unfortunately, what is happening is that the oil and gas industry has such outsized influence in our policy space and in our democratic processes that it is so important right now to get every other voice at the table. And that's why Climate Voice is focusing in on the private sector. And it's not just the private sector, it's everyone. It's labor, it's environmental groups, it's community groups, it's individuals. But the reality is when it comes to the money, the oil and gas industry is still throwing more money to oppose progress than any of us are throwing to, catapult progress. So we need to know that. And as individuals, if we understand that, of course, our individual actions matter, and you mentioned flying and driving and so on, of course, all of that matters, but we need the policy incentives and solutions to get us to where we need to be. And this is another thing we can do, we can be advocating for whatever climate policy is on the table in your state or your city or your county. You can be advocating for that. And that's really important because we need that larger scale change to get us where we need to be. And part of that is, incentivizing all of these solutions that are there, electrifying EVs, all of our like decarbonizing strategies, electrifying the grid, building electrification. We need the incentives. And then we also need help from the policy space to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, for example, to make sure we're incentivizing renewables and so on. So there's so many places where, we need that policy lever to get us to where we need to be, to have our emissions by 2030 and to get to net zero by 2050. We absolutely can't do it without that lever. So get involved.
I mean, less than 6.5 years away, 2030, exactly. And we're not close to our goal. Well, I'm currently living in Hill Country, Texas, and I'm looking out at so many roofs in this hot triple-digit sun that don't have solar panels. I mean, I know Texas is actually surprisingly good with wind energy and maybe solar too, but like if I were president or king or queen or God, I would, hand out solar panels for free to put on every rooftop, not just residential, but warehouses and companies. And, we live here now, so I know how you do have to keep the AC on. Didn't so much when I lived in Northern California. And the only way I don't completely melt of guilt knowing too much as I do is we have solar panels and we have electric cars. Like the AC factor, even maybe like if you don't fly and drive, if you're a homebody and you can work remotely, you probably are going to need AC more than you used to. That's, it's a big energy suck. And I just wanted to mention that in these hopefully last days of summer heat, whatever, how we could be doing so much more with solar. Just simple.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, for those who have the means to install solar, that's fantastic. And then in the meantime, we need, programs such as what is now possible with the Inflation Reduction Act to help cities and counties accelerate, getting solar panels up and the whole electrification process. But again, it costs so much money. And so we need help. We can't all just do it ourselves. We do need that policy.
Absolutely. And
help us get there.
Quick points. There are ways to get solar, like sort of lease solar, and you don't have to pay much up front. So I just want to mention that.
Yes.
It's available everywhere, but it should be becoming more available because of course that's the big stumbling block is cost, but we can't afford to not utilize this technology, which by the way, China's making a lot more solar panels than we are. And the last point I guess I wanted to make is, let's see, politically, I mean, there's one party, you probably, if you didn't watch it, heard about the Republican debate. Not one of those candidates, raised their hand saying they believe in climate change, man-made. They're clearly in, the fossil fuel industry is padding their pockets. Can they really get away with that in 2023? Young Republicans are certainly not happy that no one will acknowledge it's a problem. And the answers that were given to that question by a young person at the debate were just pathetic, frankly. I could mention them all, but probably most people are aware by now. Like, that's a big problem. I mean, that people are told to vote. It's critically important when you have one party that is not recognizing the urgency and the crisis. And then you've got places like the Chamber of Commerce, the fossil fuel industry working against the cause.
Right. Yes. Well, I hope it's not going to fly in 2023 and beyond. I do feel hopeful that things are changing. And even if the party is paying lip service to climate denialism, which they are, I do know that there are efforts afoot from within that party to be taking action on climate. So I think it's a matter of time. I think that we should rest assured there are efforts underway. And even I'm just thinking, I mean, this is a big can of worms to open up, but I'm thinking about ESG and how there's this whole, backlash, at least out in the media sphere against ESG. But in some ways, it feels like a lot of it is for show these days, because then, on the inside, when talking with companies, is that really impacting the decisions that are happening on the ground? No, because they know what's really happening. And does that make sense? Just that, there's like the lip service and like this narrative that is still being upheld and which still has power. So we need to unravel it. But then I think that the powers that be, whatever political affiliation they may identify with, are still moving in this direction towards emissions reduction, ESG investing. We're going to get to net zero. That's where the world's heading.
And just on one last note, you mentioned lip service. I mean, we have another COP coming up, and I think for so many years there was a lot of good intentions, but not follow through on the part of countries. And it was almost okay to give lip service and get away with it. And it was almost like, well, what can we do really on the inside? But I think that is really changing now that people have seen climate change has arrived big time, faster than even scientists predicted. Of course, there's a feeling of like, no, we can't just pretend we're doing something. It has to be real.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think the pressure is mounting. And I think that's the point, right? And that's why people like myself and all of the organizations that I work with and people that I've worked with, we know that we need to continue building our power, raising our voice, keeping the pressure on, and demanding integrity and authenticity and true meaningful action. And I think that we'll see that again playing out at COP and calling out when that isn't happening.
And at Climate Week in New York, UN Climate Week, I know the epic. There's so many events. I need 3 of me every day. And then there's the march, and there's going to be a protest that I will be at outside Fox headquarters by a group called Truth Tuesdays that, like myself, are in disbelief and disgusted by the fact that they're still lying about climate change and deliberately disinforming the public. So stay tuned for that. I want to thank you, Deborah McNamara, and give my best to Bill, and best of luck with your campaign. I hope our viewers will spread the word. Everybody needs to be an ambassador for this. I want to thank my co-founder, John Lake, and also our editor, Rob Toplansky. Wonderful to have a full-time editor on board. We're all volunteers. We're doing this for our children, grandchildren, and yours. Please spread the word. We're trying to get enough subscribers on our YouTube channel at greentv.com that we can start live streaming. So I could come to you live from New York every day. But YouTube has some rules, and you have to have a certain number of viewers and viewing hours. And we're still relatively new, so we do need everyone to subscribe and help spread the word. All we're trying to do is 3 things: tell the whole truth, even if it's difficult at times, because you can't solve a problem. Just ask anyone who's been to AA until you acknowledge the problem. We connect the dots. I've been a dot connector, green dot connector, for over 2 decades, and know the people who do that so well, like yourself. And we are relentlessly focused on solutions. So thank you so much, you and Climate Voice, for being a solutionary, and escape the chamber. Go for it. Good luck.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.